On today's show, the Stanley Cup Finals is heading north, but the Eastern Conference champion Florida Panthers have a 2-0 series lead. We'll focus on our Conn Smythe leaderboard and what the Cats need to do to bring Lord Stanley to South Florida. That's all coming up on today's edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Your team every day.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On NHL. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. As always, it's the Battle of Ontario edition from Locked On Maple Leafs. Joining me, it's Mike DiStefano. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Today is Wednesday, June 12th, and Mikey, I should have been a little more specific in my intro. The Cats bringing the cup back to South Florida. Should say the east side of South Florida. They're getting more cup action than anybody else in the league down there.
I know, legitimately. That Stanley Cup has had a lot of sun over the last few years. You think about Tampa, Florida. It might as well just put up the Hall of Fame in Florida at this point if the Cup wants to be there for so much. Dude, these Panthers look good, brother. They look good. They're supposed to be the better team. They've been the better team for the most part. And when they haven't, Bobrovsky was the better goaltender. So, it doesn't surprise me at this point that they're up 2-0 in the series, that they have a pretty good stranglehold. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I think Barkov's status up in the air a little bit. We'll see what that ends up bringing, and if that could maybe open the window a little bit for Edmonton. But overall, through 2 games, man, I don't think Florida could be too upset with how things have gone for them.
They played some of their worst hockey of the playoffs and found a way to win thanks to Sergei Bobrovsky's shutout in Game 1. And then it was all systems go in Game 2. I know there was, it wasn't perfect, but certainly the Panthers have to be happy being up 2-0 in this series. And the Atlantic Division, my goodness, this is just the best division in hockey or what? Panthers this year and last year, 3 straight seasons of Tampa. And I know it was weird during COVID. Oh, wait, the entire Stanley Cup final was the Eastern Conference Atlantic Division in the COVID season with Montreal taking on Tampa. And you even go back to before COVID, 2020, it was Tampa, and 2019, it was Boston. The Boston Bruins. So this Atlantic Division's on quite the run here, eh?
Yeah, I mean, you and I know it very well. Not being able to sit atop of it at any point here throughout the last little bit with, other teams taking turns up at the top, and neither of which reside in the great province of Ontario, unfortunately. But yeah, you got the Boston Bruins, they're a great team. They've been solid. Tampa, obviously. And now, oh, wait, here come the Panthers. And they're not going anywhere either. You look at what their cap situation's like and their contracts and who's coming back outside of, Reinhart and I guess Montour. They'll have to figure out with those guys. Everyone else is pretty much locked in to try and repeat if they can get it done again this year. So I don't see the Atlantic getting any easier either going forward.
This Cats team, they're creating a culture, it feels like, of hockey in the east part of South Florida. We know that Tampa has had quite the fan base. It happens when you win the cup like they did back in 2004. And then that generation got to see Stamkos drafted first overall and grow with the team through disappointments like the 2015 Stanley Cup final, and then ultimately get to the top of the mountain. So that side of South Florida has been a hockey market. And obviously the Snowbirds help on both ends of it. But in Florida, it really feels like the players are ones that the fans can latch onto. Matthew Tkachuk being a true superstar, kind of bringing them to the next level, it felt like down there. Sustainable, I think, doesn't even begin to cover it, but it ultimately starts in goal with the 35-year-old. To me, Sergei Bobrovsky, with what he did in Game 1 specifically, and full playoffs too, but specifically this cup final, he's my Conn Smythe guy. I know we kind of batted a few names around last week, but I'm narrowing in on Sergei Bobrovsky now. And I think the odds at FanDuel last week, wasn't it the the highest odds or like the longest shot of a forward defense or goalie. I think it was a goalie, but I mean, if he gets one more shutout, I mean, 2 shutouts in the cup final, I think should be enough to do it. I know it's easier said than done, but man, he's halfway there.
Yeah, I would say so, but I mean, for me, it's funny because we had this discussion when we were talking about Conn Smythe, and it's like, well, if the Panthers shut down McDavid and Barkov is the reason for it, I mean, Barkov certainly needs to be in the mix and up at the top of the board. But I think what we maybe discounted a little too much was, well, what if it's Bobrovsky just stopping pucks? Like, what if he's the guy who actually is the one who's shutting him down? Like, yeah, low scoring games, you can give a lot of credit to Barkov. But I mean, what we saw happen in game one, you got to give a lot more credit to Officer Bob's. And I would imagine he's just going to continue this going forward. Like we've seen Bobrovsky play at this high of a level for a long period of time. You know, he's not someone who just goes in there for a couple of games, like 1 week he's hot and then he's not the next. We've watched him literally as early as a year ago go on like a 6-week bender where this guy just locks in and looks like he's prime Marty Brodeur. It's insane what this guy can do when he's at his best. I think I saw a stat. They've limited their opponents to 2 or less goals in all but 4 of their 19 playoff games so far this year. Like, yes, credit to the defense, obviously, but like that's just Bobrovsky doing what he needs to do on a nightly basis. It's absurd what this guy can do come playoff time. I think he deservedly is the front runner at this point, and should they win it in 5-6 games, probably will be the Conn Smythe winner for 2024.
Hopefully Alexander Barkov's able to go for game 3 because that matchup with Connor McDavid was awesome in the first 2 games. And McDavid's in such an interesting spot. Obviously, he's such an elite talent, has had big moments and scored big goals, specifically game 6 of the Western Conference final. But 5 goals is almost a bit surprising for the NHL playoff points leader. Is that something that the Cats are doing right? Obviously, this is just this one series, but in terms of the whole playoffs, are you surprised that McDavid is continuing to just play the role of only being a facilitator?
I mean, sort of, yeah. Like at some point you would think, and maybe game 3, maybe tomorrow night's that night where he erupts. I know that there's some speculators out there that suspect that to be the case, just because it's time to put your team on the back at that point. But ultimately, like he's kind of just been that all year. You know what I mean? Like you look around at the Oilers and you look at their goal scoring. Like he was what, 3rd, 4th on the team in goals this year.
He
Dropped
scored
like
32 goals. 32 goals in the regular season. It's the fewest he's had since he was 19 years old.
Right. So like that's kind of just what he's been all season long, where he's just been setting guys up. Now, again, you're seeing dudes like Hyman and guys like, you know, Ryan Nugent Hopkins and whatnot. They're just not finishing when they're being set up. Like I've seen those guys in front of the net, you know, where they've been able to score those tipping goals, they've been able to score those rebound goals, or when they're at the side of the net tap-ins and they're just getting a little bit of air on them. Well, now they're airmailing them and they're going high and above the net, above the bar, and not going in. So they're getting a little bit of bad puck luck. And I think at some point, yeah, you would expect for Connor McDavid just to say, all right, screw it. Apparently I got to win this thing by myself. And I'm excited to see if game 3, home ice, in front of the fans, in front of hopefully Flash Lady, will he kind of kick it up a notch and really go legend mode to try and get Edmonton back into this thing?
We're going to find out tomorrow. What do you make of the interesting wrinkle? The Oilers flew home right after the game. They wanted to get in their own beds. And then for Florida, they said, no, we've got an extra day here. We're going to stay home and then make the 6-hour flight up to Northern Alberta. That's a couple time zones over. I think it's a little risky. They might come out a little slow. I don't know. I think that's a long way to go. I'd rather, if I was in charge, get
2
there.
hours. It's not like it's not like you're going across to Europe. It's a 2-hour.
It's further. It's a further flight to Edmonton from Miami than it is to Spain from Miami.
Is that true? Is that a
That is
true?
true.
Wow. That's what, but I mean, the flight's 5 hours, but I'm talking time zone. You said time zones. Like, it's a 2 hour, difference in time zone is what I'm talking about here. Flight,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit of a long flight, but I don't know. I think they gave you that extra day. Might as well take advantage of it. I'd rather be at home, just like the Oilers. They wanted to go and be at home for a day. Why wouldn't the Panthers want to stay and stick around at home for an extra day? I think it makes sense.
I think I lied. It's close though.
Dude, there's no chance. Spain is at least like a 7-hour flight.
From Miami?
Dude, Miami isn't really like that much further than like where we are where I am, I guess, in Toronto.
Let us know in the comments, any air travel experts, because they keep saying, "Oh, this is the farthest
This is a
distance."
Googleable. This is a Googleable thing. Oh, it is
A
the farthest
Googleable.
distance that we've seen in a long time, but we've never gone from Miami to Spain, brother. That's never been a possibility. Like, it's all been
Dude,
within North America. We're going continents, my guy.
I thought Ottawa and Anaheim was just as far, if not further, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean,
Pretty
yeah,
much. I'm not a geography major.
Is this this is the furthest it's ever been? You know why? Because I think it's like Edmonton's more like northern, I guess, isn't it? And Florida's more south. Like,
exactly.
Miami's more south than Anaheim was. So,
okay,
it's probably close, realistically.
Okay. We'll regroup after the break, talk more about why the Florida Panthers are only 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup. And Mike, he wants to say something, and we're going to make you wait to find out after a quick word. You're listening to the Eastern Conference edition of Locked On NHL. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends at Gametime. Are you looking for last-minute tickets at the lowest prices? Look no further than Gametime. Gametime is the official ticketing app of the Locked On Podcast Network. I got my tickets for the NHL Draft on Gametime. So next time you're looking for any sort of live event, whether it's sports, comedy, theater, or more, browse through the Gametime app, and you can also discuss why it is the best app going. I'll tell you why I think it is. I think it's the best app because I can get views for my seats. I don't get any surprise fees that come sneak up on me at the end when at checkout. That's the worst. And I know I'm covered with the most flexible service policy in the ticketing industry. I love the all-in prices. I love the lowest price guarantee, which means that Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you show them the same tickets in the same section and row for less somewhere else. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets, whether it's to the Stanley Cup Finals or any other event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we have local experts on the biggest stories 5 days a week. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, be a friend, and tell a friend about LO NHL. All right, Mike, what'd you have cooking for me there? You going to chirp my flight knowledge again?
You're not even close. You're not even. It's about a 5.5 hour flight from Miami to Edmonton, right? From Miami to, now, granted, I picked Barcelona because that's
that's on the east side of Spain.
Okay. What's the closest major airport to Spain? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I just picked the biggest city in Spain. Regardless,
let's go with okay. How about I can change my answer to Portugal? Basically the same thing. Give me Lisbon.
Okay,
Miami to Lisbon.
Miami to Lisbon flight time. You're looking at 8 hours and 20 minutes. So like 3 extra hours to Lisbon. 3 more hours. You're not even remotely close. You said that with so much confidence too.
I was pretty sure. Not even close.
9 hours. by the way, was the answer. 9 hours to Spain. So,
they don't even have direct flights Miami to Edmonton. So they did.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's why you fly charter, pal.
Well, didn't they do that for the media? I heard there was a charter for the media yesterday that went from Miami to Edmonton.
That would have been smart. I mean, for all of the media, like all the national and the columnists and everybody, I guess, to fly charter, one big plane possibly would make sense.
Do you know what the record is for the Stanley Cup final when a team goes up 2-0?
Oh, I don't know the record, but I think it's something like 91% of the time they win.
Wow.
I think that's like the percentage odds. I don't know what the exact number is or record is, but yeah, like 91 or 93% of the time, team goes up 2-0, they finish. And I fully expect for that to happen here. Fully expect.
Out of the last 14 Stanley Cup finals, a team that has gone down 2-0, 11 of them got a win in game 3, including the 06 Oilers. And it makes sense, right? Even though you're down 2-0, you come home, you get your home crowd, everybody's excited. The old saying, you're not in trouble until you lose at home. And I would argue you're not in trouble when you have the best player on planet Earth. And that's what the Oilers have right now. I think they need a McDavid legacy game, though, to be able to come back in this series. They need it.
Well,
and you talked about last week, we talked about how he was going to be among the greats in all-time playoff single-season points. But the Florida Panthers have done a great job of, I don't want to say taking him out. That's easier said than done. Doesn't happen. He just has 1 assist, though, in 2 games. And the Oilers only have 1 goal in 2 games, which is even more impressive.
I know. He legitimately might not even get like the modern record, like that Geno set. I think it was 38 points. Like, that seemed like a lock a week ago. Seemed like a lock that he was going to get to 38 points if this thing won 6 or 7 games. But I mean, 2 games in, just 1 piddly assist. It doesn't seem as much of a lock anymore, does it? But
no.
It's interesting. The Oilers, they really do just seem like a team that's kind of they're beat up, man. Like they just don't have a lot of punch left in them, unfortunately. And I think the Florida Panthers, it's footing because the Panthers were in that situation last year against Vegas, and then they knew like, hey, we got to preserve a little bit here because it gets tougher as you get into June. And now the shoe's on the other foot where they're going up against a team and imposing their will against the opposition and taking out some of their star players. Like, Darnell Nurse might not be able to play. Vander Kane's playing at like 40% health. It looks like he's been, not great. Even Leon hasn't looked very healthy. And then you got to question McDavid too. So you're getting to a point now with these Oilers where it's health is playing a major factor in why I think that team, that offense has been, not as successful as we thought they'd be.
No, it would not. But what is it about the Florida Panthers? Because I think as much as we've talked about kind of how Edmonton's best players need to push another gear higher, Florida's been battle tested. They've been in this situation last year. They were on the wrong end of it. Is it just lessons learned and that's why they're ahead? They're playing so tight defensively and everybody is supporting one another, whether it's being positionally there on the ice or getting into it after the whistle and letting them know nobody's going to push them around.
Yeah, it's all of that, Ross. Like, it really is. I mean, this is a team, like the second that Edmonton gets the puck in the offensive end, they got a guy on them. Like, they're breathing on these dudes and they're taking chunks out of them anytime they move the puck. Like, they finish their hits. They're imposing their will on these Edmonton Oilers. So, and if you want to go to the front of the net, like, there's a price to pay, right? These guys aren't letting you just go there willy-nilly. So certainly, you got to give a lot of credit to how Florida plays. They play the right way come playoff time. And we're seeing it come to fruition and we're about to watch them, win a championship by doing so. I just think they got to continue to do this essentially, like just stay on them like white on rice and don't give them any time and space, which is what they've been able to do. And then eventually, Edmonton has been prone to make that mistake or two, or I should say, sorry, Evan Bouchard prone to make a mistake or two, or Darnell Nurse. And then the Panthers have done a really good job of capitalizing. That's what good teams do. They make you pay for your mistakes. So they play pretty mistake-free hockey, and they keep the puck out of the net, and then they wait and they pounce when you do. And that's pretty much been the recipe for the Panthers. So I just keep doing what they're doing. Things are looking pretty good for them so far.
They're so deep. They have so much skill at every position. I think Paul Maurice has done a remarkable job in terms of pushing the right buttons in the locker room and getting these guys right out ready to play. Not many nights where they don't win the first 10 minutes, right? Whether or not they're winning on the scoreboard is one thing, but territorially, they really come out and have strong starts.
Absolutely. You talk about the depth. I mean, the NHL, they do when they do the Conn Smythe, they do it right. I will say that, where they do the entire playoff MVP, whereas the NFL and the NBA and the World Series, they just pick like the MVP of that game or that series. But at this point, like you're looking at a guy like Evan Rodriguez, who, if this was like, all right, who's the MVP of the series? I mean, he could be right up there with Bobrovsky, probably next in line for MVP.
And he was like, wasn't he like an August signing? He was a late signing after everyone else had gone.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, I guess I'll go back to Florida. It's like, like this guy out here, third liner, and he's a two-way guy. He plays a heavy game, and now he's scoring 3 goals for you in a Stanley Cup final. Like that's what the best teams do. You need players like that to randomly step up and make big plays and those random plays for you. And that's ultimately what they're getting. So the big boys are coming up, playing big on both sides of the ice, 200 feet. The blue line's been great. Their goaltending's been spectacular, and they're getting the depth as well. It's a well-rounded team. Ultimately, the Panthers, I mean, they deserve to be where they're at right now, up 2-0 in this series.
And I wonder if there's something to be said about having their defensemen a little bit fresher in terms of their minutes. You look around the league and there's guys who are playing a ton of minutes, and we saw it most notably. With who am I thinking of there? Miro Heiskanen is playing a ton.
Yeah, I think Bouchard played like 30 minutes the other night, didn't he?
Yeah, he's averaging 25 for the postseason per game, whereas nobody on the Florida Panthers D-core is averaging more than 23-21. And that's Gustav Forsling. Last year, 23-25. Alex Pietrangelo leading Vegas. Second on Vegas was 20-08, Shea Theodore. They're not putting their big dogs out there to tire themselves out. I know Heiskanen's a very kind of the exception to the rule. Like, he can play 30 minutes and still be effective. Not many guys can. So I think, and they've also, knock on wood, when's the last time a team won the Stanley Cup only using 6 defensemen all playoffs?
Yeah, that
they haven't
doesn't
made a
happen.
single change. Vegas had 8 last year, but it feels like usually it's even more. It's 9, it's 10. You have to have depth. They've got 6 guys that have played all 19 games.
That's actually kind of wild. I didn't realize that, but yeah, they've been quite blessed when it comes to the injuries. Now, this Barkov situation going into Game 3 is it's looking better. Like, I think I saw that he was skating Wednesday morning in practice in regular sweater, so it looks like he's going to play. But for a second there, it was definitely worrisome. So they've been pretty healthy, which is sometimes the luck you need to win a Stanley Cup. But the fact they've only used 6 defensemen specifically is kind of wild. But you talk about, the reason why they're able to stretch out the minutes. It's because they have a trustworthy third pair. Like, not every team is blessed with OEL and Dmitry Kulikov as your third pair. Like, you can trust those guys out there to play 15, 16, 17 minutes and not have to only restrict them to like 10 or 11 minutes. So you have to play your big boys way more. So it's just, again, depth, man. Depth is so key in the playoffs, especially the later you go, to keep legs nice and fresh.
Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final goes tomorrow. For more, go check out Armando Velez of Locked On Florida Panthers, and we've got Locked On Edmonton Oilers as well. We've got rumors from the Eastern Conference. Next, you're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million in coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help you talk you through it. You can easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks at the lowest prices. For your work-life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policygenius provides you unbiased opinion from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. Thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So check life insurance off of your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where we have local experts on the biggest stories. For more on the Leafs, go check out Locked On Maple Leafs with Mike DiStefano. I'm Ross Levitan from Locked On Ottawa Senators. Our teams are long gone. Mine, 7 games before yours again. But that means the rumors can continue as offseason goes on. Now, David Pagnotta from the fourth period, he's been right, he's been wrong. He's not Elliot Friedman, but he certainly has connections in the National Hockey League. And I don't know if this is just Steve Staios doing his due diligence, because they've been very strong on not allowing leaks, but this is just from David Pagnotta. He has the Jacob Chychrun teams linked, and we'll get to that because you might know one of those teams. He's got the Senators as potential suitor for Nikolai Ehlers. He's got the Senators in the mix for Jacob Markstrom and UC Saros and Philip Gustafsson and Elvis Merzlikins. You think this guy's actively trying to undo some of the damage of Pierre Dorion or what?
That or you're seeing a reporter just kind of throw a bunch of what at the wall and see one of these guys is going to be right. I'll be right with one of them, you would think. But I would imagine, yeah, of course, the Ottawa Senators are going to be heavy in the goaltending market.
Can we talk for a second, though, how they have UC Saros, Jacob Markstrom, Philip Gustafsson, and Elvis Merzlikins? Like, those are not the same quality goalies. There's a very wide range of talent in those 4 guys.
There is. Like, you've got obviously the top 2 there and Markstrom and Saros, and then a bit of a drop off. You got Gustafsson.
Which would be hilarious.
Is barely an NHL goalie anymore.
If they got him
back Philly franchise.
Now, I will say though, what do you think of this? And I don't want to get sidetracked because there's one other rumor I want to talk about here. But Korpisalo for Merzlikins. Fresh start, 1 less year, and you send Korpisalo back to a place he knows.
So you be good with that?
I don't know. I'm not the biggest Merzlikins guy, but I've also, my most visited Cap Friendly page recently is Joonas Korpisalo buyout, and it's 8 years, dude. It's 8 years. So I'm just trying to think of creative ways that could at least shorten the problem if you're not going to get rid of it.
Speaking of, by the way, pour one out for the Cap Friendly users.
Me.
I know, me as well. The amount of time over the last couple weeks that I've been on that site, gutting that it's going to be gone.
A new one will rise. A new one will rise. There was Cap Geek before Cap Friendly.
Puckpedia.
It's not doing it for
Puckpedia
me. But they seem open. Site. They seem open to feedback, so it'll get there.
They'll adapt. They'll get there. But yeah, I mean that's an interesting deal. I think both of those goaltenders don't solve the problem though. Like that's the thing.
No,
I don't think Merzlikins solves any issues either. You're just robbing Peter to pay Paul type of deal. So
yeah, but you're paying him for shorter period. That's the thing. That's where we come down to, right? Because Korpisalo 4 years left at $4 million. Like that's unattainable. You can't have that. Have it.
No, you can't.
But I mean, we'd be remiss. Locked On Senators, Locked On Leafs. One of the teams linked to Jacob Chychrun is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Your thoughts? Because we had heard under the old regime that Kyle Dubas was interested in him when he was in Arizona.
Yeah. No, thanks. I'll pass.
I'd take 24th overall.
Well, that doesn't belong to Toronto. 23rd overall does, though.
23rd. That's what I meant. Yeah.
No, I don't. It's another left shot defenseman. Like the Leafs need
I know.
someone
I've
on
got
the right
45
side.
of them. It sends up 45
so
left shot defensemen on the roster.
Yeah, like it's just there's
why are right shot defensemen? Why are right shot defensemen so hard to find?
There's just not a lot of them. Are you a lefty or a righty?
I shoot right. I wish I'd played defense.
You should have played defense growing up. But yeah,
I know. I played goalie. What a waste.
There's only 30 of those, man. You know how many defensemen are out there? And even left's right-handed defensemen. You wasted your talents, brother.
Yep.
I'm a lefty. I was a left shot defenseman. That was my position. So I was going nowhere. Going nowhere quick. Funny. I was going to be lumped in with Eric Brandstrom.
Yeah, no doubt. No, but there's just so many lefties, and I'm just looking at what the other names are, and this is obviously all from David Pagnotta, but it is rumor mill season. The other teams actually make sense because we have heard the Predators have been interested in him and the Washington Capitals. We're seeing the Calgary Flames as a potential fit. Now, for Senators fans, Markstrom, Chychrun, there'd have to be some picks involved. What really is interesting about a potential trade with Ottawa and Calgary is they pick 2 picks apart, 7th and 9th. And there could be a guy, I don't know if you've heard the name Iginla, but if a guy by the name of Iginla is available at 7, which I don't know if he will, but if you're Calgary, I mean, just for the PR, let alone he's a heck of a player, 47 goals in junior this year. Like, if you're Staios, you'd be like, oh, would you like to sell 1 million jerseys tomorrow?
Yeah.
Or not?
Yeah.
So, interesting.
Yeah, that's a good, that'd be a decent little linkage there. I know that there will be a lot of teams that'll be very much interested in a Jacob Markstrom, but there aren't a lot of teams that could offer the 7th overall pick. So the Sens definitely have the upper hand there. Although Markstrom's got a full no move, right? So he kind of
and he's coming off some of his
care
worst
about
hockey.
Calgary. Markstrom played pretty good this year.
I think he's a 904 save percentage. I know his goal saved above expected was higher. Like he got a little bit of bad luck there. And his start wasn't as good, and I think he finished a bit better, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm nervous. I've been bitten 25 times about a goalie. Like, I just want a good one. They haven't had a good one in Ottawa since Craig Anderson, and it's just been a revolving door. And then the only time we thought we hit it, I know a guy you like, Anders Nielsen, and then he had his concussion issues. He was actually playing well, and then they just haven't found a guy, and they've taken some big swings and struck out in a big way.
Well, they've had a lot in their system. They just let them go.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Well, we might be getting one back.
Yeah, Joey Decord.
I would love to have Dax back. But yeah, it's going to be a complete gong show. I think there's going to be a lot of movement. We know the cap is officially set, and it's like 300,000 more than they thought. Is it 88 or 90?
$88 million is the cap. Yeah, an extra $300K than what they originally projected it to be. So that's a good sign of good health for the league, and I think that'll mean that we'll see a lot more movement this summer. I think that is going to be the case because now we're going up a full, like basically $4.5 million in cap, which is the largest increase we've seen in years. So the hands have been tied for many years for a lot of these general managers, and finally, the string, the yarn's being loosened. So we'll see what these guys can do. I did also see a report that apparently the Montreal Canadiens are ready to take that next step. We'll say they plan on being heavy players in free agency and in the trade market. I think Jake Gensel is kind of the apple of their eye at this point in free agency. That'd be a nice little get for them. So that's another team to kind of keep an eye on. That's going to be busy over the next month.
Cannot wait. The NHL draft is always one of the most fun times of the year, but let's not wish away what has been a great series so far and promises to continue as it shifts up the Stanley Cup Finals to a place where the Stanley Cup knows well, the City of Champions in Edmonton. For more from us, you can go check out Locked On Maple Leafs, Locked On Ottawa Senators, wherever you get podcasts. We are free and available on YouTube. we'll hand it over to Power Rankings Thursdays. You're listening to Locked On NHL.